Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to the Zoom Test Kitchen. I'm Jeff Widgren, your host. Glad to be here. Glad you're here. You can find us on YouTube. We stream live every Friday, and there's all the archives there to view as well when you want to look back on topics. And you can find us on Discord as well and Facebook. So take a look, join the community, and dig in with us as we dig into the details of Zoom and the production side of it as well, and really extend our knowledge and prepare ourselves for that next gig. So anyways, really glad to be here. Glad to be feeling good enough to try this out. This week's been battling the flu, and this is the first day I feel human. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Ray, David, John. Let's see who else we got here. I want to get to gallery view and see everybody. Brandon is here off camera. Hello, Brandon, Hashmuk, Tom, Trevor, Frank. Got a few, and a few still rolling in as well. So anyways, got our meters up as well. Looks like I'm doing okay at about -24 there. Sound all right, guys? Yeah. All right. So David, thank you very much for covering for me last week. Always appreciate that. And almost called you last night, but I thought, let me wait till morning to see how I'm feeling. So with the advent of a few drugs and some rest, it worked out okay. Frank is here as well. Hello, Frank. And Tom. How are you, Tom? All right. Well, very good. I sent out a little bit of a late invite, but mentioned that Andy dropped an announcement of a major feature enhancement to Zoom Rooms. I'm not set up with a Zoom Room to show and demo it, but did want to spread that information as well. So
you're going to have to explain to me this release. I don't understand this. I don't really understand Zoom Rooms in general, I think, is my problem.
Yeah, let's walk through this a little bit here. And let me bring up if you'll spotlight me, I will share my screen. That should be Discord primarily. And so this is Andy's first note is that he says it wouldn't be the holidays if it didn't bring more gifts to the office hours team. And with the Zoom Room NDI in breakout rooms, which is a major enhancement, and with 4 camera captures and the Zoom ISO style media engine running within Zoom Rooms, offering persistent NDI outputs. And then he goes on to describe in further detail. He says there's 2 main features wrapped up into this. He says, one, today the Zoom Room will only create the NDI outputs after you assign the participant to the output slot. This means that your decoder apps such as hardware or vMix, etc.,
You've muted yourself.
Actually, I did it by mistake, Jeff.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
thanks.
no problem. So I'm not sure where I got muted, but anyways, felt like the
Hey, Jeff, real quick before you go on, can you just make my ISO machine a co-host, please?
Yes. There you go. Need me to pause the recording as well, I'm assuming.
No, I already did that.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So, anyways, today the Zoom room uh, doesn't expose that output to vmix or hardware until somebody it joins the meeting and somebody is assigned to it. So he felt that was backwards, and so we want to be able to set up early and be prepared for the meeting. And so now the outputs will be available to the network as soon as the Zoom room boots. Notably, this is not related to preserving assignments. It's just a change when the NDI feeds are created. So they're just ready for us to prepare our production a little sooner than we were able to before. Today's Zoom room will change the resolution and frame rate of the NDI outputs based on what the resolution Zoom is receiving from the participants. And this is bad for many reasons, such as recording and where a new file would be generated every time a participant's internet fluctuated. Now the Zoom room uses the compliance system from Zoom ISO, so you can actually set the target resolution and frame rate of your NDI feeds from within the Zoom room controller. And the Zoom room will scale video up and down to keep that consistent and drop and repeat frames as needed. So persistent outputs are really about being always available and always having the same properties. So it's a pretty tight upgrade for sure. If you're using those Zoom Room NDI feeds as well as being available in the breakout rooms as well. So you can have a stage, if you will, right? In a breakout room, truly a stage that can give you NDI feeds as well. Now, Zoom ISO can provide us that also, but it's a major improvement for Zoom rooms as well. So pick your passion. And
Jeff, John is asking in the chat if Zoom OSC and ISO work with Zoom rooms. Is there overlap? I mean, do they work together? Is ISO not necessary once you have Zoom rooms?
Well, you can use both. I mean, you can use them at the same time if you wanted to, but if you have a Zoom room present that can join the meeting and go into that breakout room now, you can provide up to 4 NDI feeds from that. I think that release is forthcoming here. Let me bring up the release notes. The release notes are here. And it says, December 19th is when these Zoom room updates here are coming. And so with that, come that date and that upgrade, that will be available. So the, as far as being able to use OSC and ISO to work with Zoom rooms, they can all be present. Do you need them both? No, you don't need them both. Zoom OSC is more functional, as far as switching and managing hands and muting and spotlighting and so forth. But as far as pulling NDI feeds out, the ISO and or Zoom Rooms NDI will both accomplish the same task very similarly now, as far as keeping those consistent properties that Andy described as well.
And why would you get, so my understanding is that Zoom rooms can either be on a device that you have in a room, or you can also install Zoom rooms just on a Mac or a PC. What's the value of installing it on a Mac or a PC?
Well, I mean, I would say a device in a room, like a conference room, a corporate conference room, it all starts with a computer there too. You know what I'm saying? Is it's going to be on either a PC or a Mac and turned into a Zoom room. Zoom room has it. You don't have to walk in. You don't have to have that experience that we have at our desktop that says, "Hey, we're going to launch Zoom, the Zoom client. We're going to log in. We're going to, get into and jump into the meeting." You actually have, potentially a tablet of some sort that is the Zoom room controller, and that lets you either create a meeting or join a meeting and so forth. So the experience is slightly different. in the sense of the setting. But if we were going to take advantage of the NDI, for instance, from Zoom rooms in at our desks, then it would feel more like we'd be installing a Zoom room on one of our computers and using it that way. And we would choose, what type of controller we would want, whether it's going to be an iPad or something like that to actually do it. So with that, it feels like, do we really need it, from our desktops? Probably not. But I know, Greg Gibson for a long time has been leveraging the NDI feeds from Zoom rooms for production, first locally in his offices and then in the cloud as well. So it has been a great advantage for him and others that have leveraged that, as Zoom ISO has, now released version 2, which is super strong and solid and amazing at that. Um, that can simplify that as well. So it's really there's tools for both, and being able to get that isolate audio out and have individual mixes and so forth can be um, a major advantage as well. So welcome, John. Good to see you.
Glad to be here, and I assume you made the announcement, the Andy's gift he said he did for the holidays.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about right now. Yeah, I read through his detailed descriptions and the release date coming up here. It looks like in 3 days, where they'll actually push that out there and the whole bit. So yeah,
Some
we're
of the
excited.
office hours OGs, as we call ourselves, will remember the constant drumbeat of post-it notes I was putting on a mirror for Zoom employees saying, "When will we get NDI? We'll get
Yeah, that's
NDI."
right.
I think we finally have reached a level of NDI that we were hoping for.
Oh, for
early
sure.
on.
Yeah, I remember you and Greg and myself and Andy, and I think even your son joined for a little while that night. We're kind of pushing hard on and testing Zoom rooms and NDI and so forth at its very early stages. So it's all come a long ways and has become a terrific advantage for us in the production space as well. I'm always tempted to uh, consider Zoom especially with Zoom ISO and isolated feeds, whether it's Zoom rooms or Zoom ISO now, a call manager, right? I mean, to a great degree, it can, it's a gathering point, really an unlimited gathering point, where call managers, very formal, very feature rich call managers, you pay for the number of seats that you can manage coming into them as well. And so the advantage of, having, a license of 4 or a license of 8 or go to Zoom ISO and just tell all the speakers to show up in that room. And it doesn't matter whether there's, 12, 16, 24 in the queue, you're all ready to go, getting them all queued up and then sending them out to the broadcast. So it's really come a long way from the pinning farms, right? Multiple laptops and staff to manage the pinning and so forth, depending on how big the productions are, and it has really consolidated that footprint. And one of our biggest struggles early on were clean feeds too, right? Is not having the recording icons and all the indicators on screen, and having to crop out and scale up our pens to kind of take those out of frame and so forth. So shouldn't forget about all those early challenges that we had, that now we're just spoiled with a nice clean gorgeous image, and along with not just the consolidation, but the increased number of feeds that we can support as well, due to the high bandwidth mode too that they've implemented between our Zoom ISO clients and the Zoom servers in the cloud as well. So it has just done so many things. So, I look back and I go, wow, Andy and his company just got bought. What's going to happen? and, and now we know a whole lot of good has really, really come from. I mean, it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. He's a force, and so it has really made a terrific impact in our space for sure. So really enjoy him being there and doing what he's doing with his team and all that they're contributing. So, hey, Guy, I just went back to gallery view and Guy and his Christmas holiday background. I love it. How
Hello,
are you?
hello. Good.
Good. Very good. Well, anybody else have Trevor? I want to say hi to Trevor as well. Glad to have you here. Trevor, a couple weeks ago, entertained many of us. He's a very accomplished musician on viola, was what we heard, I think, and violin from, or do I have that backwards? Were you viola and your partner was violin?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very good. And integrated with all just tied into Isadora. They were what 150 miles away from one another, playing live together using the far play technology, and tied in and pumping it through Isadora. And remind me what else? What other
And
tech were you using?
Ableton also.
Ableton as well. And I featured that cover photo that David loves me for.
Yeah, thanks for that, by the way.
His amazed look, because we're moving our hands and it's drawing, and we're moving our hands and it's playing music, and this is all this tech that Trevor has leveraged with their phenomenal musical skills as well, is integrated this ability to um, create this interactive time in your meetings, if you will. And I just think it's absolutely fascinating. I'm working with Trevor and really trying to let the world know that there's a way to have an audience come in and not have to be a musician, not have to be prepared for the activity, but yet be absolutely mesmerized, and not just be an audience member that's receiving something, but they can actually contribute in the whole bit. It's I think it's truly amazing at that. I think about we've talked about rehab facilities, children care facilities, how quiet and long those days might be for those kids, that they all of a sudden they could be on a Zoom meeting just doing some really, really cool things, and so forth. So I think there's all kinds of possibilities, and that comes from me, who have managed, like a lot of different meetings, and seen and witnessed a lot of different efforts of entertainment. They have session after session after session, and then they'll have a break, and they'll have yoga, or they'll have dueling pianos, or things like that. But they're almost all like deliverables, versus something that the audience can actually engage in. So I think it's just yet a witness of another step up on really providing something more in a Zoom meeting that just kind of kills that whole phenomenon that I never bought into it very strongly, the Zoom fatigue, if you will. But when you see something like this compared to a lot of previous efforts, I guess, well, it could be a bit of fatigue, and so when you create engaging things like that, people want to be there and they want to talk about it and so forth. So great job, Trevor, for sure. Keep that going. But any other thoughts and so forth from anybody here that you want to throw out there for discussion, or things that you've identified and want to share? Things maybe last week, guys, that you guys talked about. I listened to a lot of it. I just couldn't get involved, but It was a good meeting, lots of good discussion. David?
More of a question, actually. So we spent a lot of time last week talking about the big upcoming release that didn't come. It was
Yeah,
postponed,
saw
and
that
I
change.
know that it looked like a lot of that release was dependent on a web release that is, I guess, rolling out on the 19th or something or the 18th maybe. I'm just curious, does anyone have a sense of why that may have been held back? Was something maybe not done, or did they just want to release it once it would be fully functional with the web release?
I don't have any other information about it. Does anybody else hear anything?
It's the nature of
Yeah.
coding. You're
Yeah,
coding and
no,
you
for
find
sure.
a flaw and you need to revise it before you release it, right?
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it's a
Is there a way to get on a Zoom beta? I've never seen there is. Does anyone know how to get on that? I'd love to get on a Zoom beta.
Ask your accountant. I asked recently. There's not always a data program going, and it depends
We're getting
on.
a lot of static from you,
someone's
by the way.
rubbing a mic really bad. Oh yeah, Frank, it's your mic. Took him offline. It was rubbing the back of his head. No. You're muted. Try again. Oh, sorry. Now I got you
Better?
unmuted.
1, 2, 3,
Mucho's
4,
better,
5, 6. Yeah, great. Anyways, I asked my rep recently about getting on a beta, and he told me basically that there's not always a beta going, but if you want to, apply to be on some of the betas, it comes sometimes with some obligations about giving feedback and stuff too, and then obviously NDAs and stuff. But Zoom has a lot of products, and there's if you're not using Zoom Phone, maybe you have zero interest in the Zoom Phone beta program, whereas you might be completely interested in the Zoom Meeting beta programs when they're available. They're not always running.
Yeah, it looks like right now they're not accepting new. I'm not sure if it's not running or they're not accepting new folks. I just gave them my email address, but
Give it a shot. See what you get. Let us know. John, what you got?
So another good way of getting involved in that is there is a Zoom community which you could sign up for, and they tend to look at people who are in the community as potential people who will they'll reach out to do things. And the other thing is do exciting things, which you already are doing. But
Yeah, true. There we go. Very good. Well, I also mentioned, I think part of last week's discussion included some points about webinar. Is there a long-lived webinar product, because there's so much being added to meetings and Zoom events is out there as a tremendous investment, and it supports webinar and meetings. Will there be? And that's just scuttlebutt, as far as that question goes. But there's always been, I've always described webinar as a theater. It's where you ask the audience to arrive, have a seat, and we'll start the movie when we're ready to start the movie, or when it's scheduled, right? And it may be live presenters, but it's truly, it's a setup from the get-go that it's a deliverable. It's a one-way deliverable for the most part. Some great advantages in the sense that as far as managing, um, a large audience, for instance, which also is mostly synonymous with a webinar as well, as the meeting capabilities maximum um, attendees is 1,000, where a webinar can be 10,000 or more if you deal with them directly and get that all set up. But with that, you get an audience that arrives without cameras and without microphones, and then you have designated panelists that and possibly translators and captioners and so forth that can in fact have microphones and cameras, and then you manage spotlighting. So there's a lot less to worry about with audible interruptions and interruptions from video feeds that are unsolicited and possibly inappropriate and so forth. So certainly that there's been Q&A in webinar and not in meetings, and I think we've heard now that's changing, is that Q&A is on the list for meetings as well. And so you begin to wonder, where is webinars play? Where is it going to fit down the road as a standalone product and standalone solution? So and even today, is how do you take that client who has an event that kicks off with, let's say, a 45-minute presentation. Maybe it's live, maybe it's a mix of live and pre-records, but at the end there's a transition, whether it's live Q&A, whether it is audience participation of some sort, where we do in fact want to have audience microphones and video and so forth. And really the only practical way to do that is it's not practical to start it in a webinar and then move everybody over to a meeting, but in essence, that's functionally what you would want to be able to transition those features. And so I put in the invitation, how can we best emulate in a meeting a webinar, as close to webinar experience as possible these days. And I want to throw that out to everybody who is here today to just throw out some ideas and practices, if you will, that contribute to that meeting setting configuration management that mimics, if you will, as close as possible, a webinar experience, so that at the end of the presentation mode, where you want zero interruptions with other video, other audio, and so forth, and then transition to, let's say, it's a party mode at that point. It's an open forum. It's it's a company party that you want everybody to have fun and enjoy, and you have a DJ and all kinds of different things that way. So I will I'll open up the floor to you to give us an idea and throw out some ideas, and just kind of go around the room and and have everybody contribute some thoughts on what it would take to accomplish that. What do you think, Ray? You got something?
I was actually just tracking a YouTube comment from David Brady about Zoom rooms that you might want to address.
Yeah, I see a comment inside the meeting chat as well from him. There we go.
I plugged it in there.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah. So David does mention Zoom rooms in the corporate arena are replacing traditional video conference endpoints such as Cisco, Life-Size, Polycom, etc. Zoom Room NDI is a cost-effective way if you're in an NDI workflow. And the other advantage to the Zoom rooms is that they can be set to auto accept calls. And as far as the discrete displays, they can be configured outputs. Yeah. So you can have up to 3 outputs and you can tell each output exactly what to display. Be 1 is active speaker, 2 is the gallery, and 3 is the content. And so they can be fixed and not auto managed, if you will. So yeah, great points for sure. Yeah, I come, back in the day when I was working IT full time. I mean, I heard somebody mention it. I think it might have been Nigel. The Cisco conference rooms, the telepresence rooms, they were, super impressive. I would say, way ahead of their time to a great degree, to where, I mean, my experience were large corporations, could make that, significant investment. When I actually used them, we used them as a family. We went to a Air Force military base to go into their telepresence room and talk to our family who was overseas. And they were in a telepresence room then. And that was years ago. But to be able to sit at that, as Nigel described, that half table that we were truly physically at, and had three to 5 large screens and cameras in front of us. And when they came online, it completed the table, and it was truly a fascinating experience. But it was a fascinating price too. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And to be able to you're not we're not mimicking that production or of the entire virtual environment necessarily, but the ability to easily connect and group together and so forth. I mean, why somebody couldn't do that to a degree, using probably a little used feature called the immersive mode of Zoom. I think the possibilities are there to a degree as well. Probably not quite to, because they had a science of setting up the rooms as well. They had to be pretty perfect as well. But needless to say, it's come a long ways. All right, so back to how would we turn this meeting into, how would we prepare it to be close to a webinar? And what does that mean? Webinars, what, a spotlight, multiple spotlights, the delivery of a pre-record, or a panel of a few people speaking, but nobody else to be seen. and no gallery view, if you will, except for the panelists. I'm talking more about the audience view, that they see what you want them to see. One, can you accomplish that in a meeting? Can you deliver to the audience exactly what you want them to see, and take away their ability to change that?
It's much more demanding on the host in a webinar to keep the attention of the audience, because unless you're representing them with cameras or with questions that are coming out of that audience, it's very hard to hold a webinar audience for very long. In this case, there can be some interaction with the people who are really interested, and hopefully those that are in YouTube or some other way of seeing it delayed will then join and know that this can truly be interactive. But I get involved in coaching people for webinars, and they're not giving enough thought into maintaining the audience's attention. There's so much distraction going on that the content has to be good, it has to be to the point, and you have to either interact quickly or move on.
Yeah. Well, and it's, for the speaker, let's say there's a speaker with a message, and that's your expertise, right? Is to, get them polished and be as effective as possible, and and coach them along. I mean, I get notes from Ray often, you know, were super helpful notes, you know, about, you know, the length of, you know, a monologue or my clearing of my throats because my sinuses, you know, things like that. And I've never taken them personally, nothing more than just a great deal of respect. But the I'm going to spotlight that real quick from Ray. What off-task behaviors are you doing during? And so, I mean, it's measured response, and people are checking their emails and texting and so forth. So there's all these other things that people can do and do and multitask and so forth. But are they really, you know, getting the message? But from the presenter's point of view, you know, the advantage of managing a webinar is you don't have to manage out accidental disruptions, if you will, right? No cameras, no audio from the audience. But guess who else doesn't have an audience to look at? Is the presenter, right? And so who are they speaking to? You know, they don't see any reactions. They don't see any facial expressions. That, you know, I mean, it becomes, it's got to be a challenge, truly, you know. So, you know, I think, you know, and Ray, you can interject anytime, is you know, shorter the segments, the better, in a sense, right? To keep it short and precise, and moving along, and change of topic, and so forth. So it has its challenges. David, you have your hand up.
So I want to answer your question about how to turn a meeting into a webinar, but I also just want to offer that I did a little workshop on Tuesday night, and it was awful. It was horrendous. It was in a meeting, but it was awful because I didn't do what I know I should have done, which is present for 15, 20 minutes and then interaction. I prepared a whole thing. I had a script. I don't know what I was thinking. I broke all of my own rules, and I sort of treated a meeting like a webinar in the sense that I wasn't engaging, reacting to what I was seeing. I wasn't inviting involvement, like all those different things. So I'm with Ray 100%. I'm not a big fan of webinars. Having said that, there are a number of things that you can do to turn a meeting into a webinar. So, you know, mute all upon entry. Don't allow people to unmute. You can have video turned off by default upon entry. You can use focus mode to make sure that all the videos are turned off except for the host, co-hosts, and people that you spotlight. Turn off chat so that they can just chat with the hosts and co-hosts. You know, I mean, we really have the capacity now. Not as soon as this new the new release comes out on Sunday or Monday, where Q&A is now available to meetings. We really have webinar in meetings if you just configure your meetings properly. Again, I don't advocate for that because I don't think that's, for all the reasons that you just expressed and that Ray just expressed. I just don't think that's the ideal experience. But we really can just very easily replicate, I think, webinars at this point in meetings.
Yeah. It, you know, the one thing that I haven't seen any change on yet, for like almost the perfect replication, is the ability for an audience member to change from speaker view to gallery view. And that, you know, that becomes a pretty minimal change in focus mode. And, you know, focus mode is available. And I'll admit, I mean, I've used it, we've demoed it, you know, we see how it works and so forth, but I haven't in production used focus mode at this point as well, you know, and so it probably wouldn't be one of those things that I'd be really used to going to and feeling comfortable that, you know, I could manage appropriately without, you know, a few hiccups here and there. So it's,
Jeff,
but it's certainly there as an option. Yeah, David.
Just another thought you just made me think of. So I'm a type A personality. I'm a control freak. So I like to control what people see.
Mm-hmm.
Having said, and in webinar, you can really do that because I want to make sure that people can see the best experience. But the real magic, I think, of all of this technology is the grand democratization that's happening, that what I want you to see isn't necessarily what you would choose to see. So for example, we sometimes spotlight in this meeting. I want to see the gallery view. That is the view that works because I've got the active speaker below me. I don't want this to change. And for a host to impose upon me a particular view of a presentation, I do it every day, but I just think that we're missing a key element of this technology, in that it allows people to choose how they consume information and connection.
Yeah, I think I'll add it depends, right, on the presentation, the messaging, the purpose of the broadcast or delivery. Because there's a lot of people who don't even know how to pin, and what pinning is versus spotlighting. And so there's a lot of choices that we're aware of that we would like to have, control of, and make those choices and do them on our time, versus others who kind of miss that opportunity because they don't dig. They don't just click to see, hey, what's there? Hey, what's there? Hey, what's there? To see what kind of flexibility they actually have in, at the power of their fingertips and their mouse. But yeah, I totally get that in that sense. So it's one of those things, and I've always, I've often anyways looked at a job to, manage a meeting really almost always from the perspective of the audience, what I want the audience to see and focus on and so forth. Fact of the matter is, especially with, Ray looking right at me saying it's super important. Hey, what about the speaker, and so let's say that we want to somewhat mimic a webinar, and so we go into a focus mode and we spotlight the speaker, and maybe they speak to somebody, so we have multi spotlights. So we have that, but did we take away or think about giving visibility to the entire audience to the speaker? If we didn't make them a co-host and we used focus mode, we took away the audience from the speaker because they won't see everybody. If they're a co-host, they'll be a speaker and they'll be able to see everybody because they're a co-host in focus mode, right? And so it's making me think kind of out loud considerations that include both ends, right? The deliverers, if you will, and the audience both.
With all respect, Jeff, that actually is another distraction from the purpose of the meeting or webinar. The purpose of the meeting should be focused all the time on 1, 2, or 3 at the most items. That's what you want to cover, and then goodbye. Well, the more people are jumping around and pinning their buddies and cross-chat and those kind of things, the more distracted they are from what you're trying to get across, from the whole purpose of the meeting. So I don't subscribe to that being attractive for the average meeting. I think that if the meeting is important, if it's well organized, then you can jump through it, get everybody engaged quickly, and then say goodbye and leave leave them wanting more.
Yeah. So are you saying not subscribing to what David described or what I described as far as
What you
giving
described.
the audience view to the speaker?
I think that by giving the audience, remember that a substantial amount of most audiences are on cell phones or portable devices. So they don't have that ability, and they don't have the value that you have when you're sitting here with a 30-inch screen. So I wouldn't make that decision that it's important to my message for this event for non-participants to jump around and pin each other and look and see what else is going on. It's distracting from the message, and it means I'm not doing a good job.
Yeah. You're saying do what you can to control the options of the possible distractive options that the audience has. Don't be the provider of those distraction points to click, if you will.
Jeff, this is a very intimate medium. And the sooner you connect this way with the audience, the sooner they're going to connect with you, and you're going to stay connected. The minute you lose them and they start wandering around, and I look at Tony and wonder what Tony's looking at, so I'm going to send Tony a note. Say, hi, Tony, I haven't seen you for a couple of days. That does not help me deliver the message. And I think it's counterproductive as a purpose to have it included. I wouldn't support that.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. John, what you got? Yep, you're muted, my friend. John, I'm going to unmute you. Oh, there we go. Try again.
Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to disagree with everything you're going to say, because you're a power user and you are irrelevant, my friend. Because most of our presenters don't even get the screen sharing done right the first time. I do a lot of medical presentations, and the medical community are obliged to have these meetings twice a year. Otherwise, they're struck off. We are finding that there is a much better attendance, 20 to 30% better attendance, because it's now online. But these presentations are PowerPoint bores. The only reason they watch them is because it's lots of interesting medical information, and therefore their attention is kept. But the presenters have enough trouble trying to get connected and then share their presentation. And before the meeting, Jeff, just like you, they will say, I want to see the audience so I can see their reaction. Oh, and I want to see the chat. When it comes to the practicalities, they have enough trouble screen sharing their presentation. They can't find the chat. They couldn't find the lovely faces of the other doctors watching them, even if they could see that the doctors don't bother turning on their cameras. In practical terms, all they can cope with is a PowerPoint slide deck that they can press the button on, because they have to read it as much as everybody else, because they have to remember what they put on their slides. They have no ability to listen to the chat. So we have somebody else who looks at the chat. They've got no ability to see the audience reactions. But what I have done is I encourage them to make use of polls, because a poll is the quickest and the most efficient way of getting audience reaction. Those reaction buttons, the thumbs up, again, my audience doesn't have the ability to find those and click on them. So again, they're lost. On bigger meetings, on big live events, I think they're a great idea, and I'm going to copy some of the stuff. Thanks, Ray, for the thumbs up. See, I'm a power user, I can see it. You can take those thumbs up and do some nice graphics with it, flying it like they did at Zoomtopia. I'm going to be making some code to do that, so watch out for that. I'm also going to do a lot more work now. I've bit the bullet with Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC. I'm going to start taking all that chat, putting it into a database, and then finding a way for my use case, which is, I don't think the same as the big use case that Zoom are doing, but for my use case where I want to split out the comments from the personal chat, from the questions, so that I get all the questions into a way which I can then give it to the presenter, remember, is going to ask the questions, or sorry, the moderator who's going to ask the questions to the presenter, because the presenter can't watch the chat while presenting. And I'll present it in a nice format that they can take the questions from that and the questions from the QA. And I'm glad the Q&A is in meeting. It's about time too, really. And I'm running typically between 70 and 150 people in my meetings. But just to summarize, I will be lucky if 3 of the doctors have their cameras on. They don't want to speak, but they like having the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I said would sound good for webinars. But the one catch is when you have groups of between 50 and 150, there are 2 things which really make a good meeting. The first one is, as I said, the interaction with the Q&A. The second thing is the odd breakout room session. And I really wish that they would put breakouts in webinars, as they did suggest they were going to about 2 years ago, because that's the other feature which gets your interaction, which you were talking about at the beginning. It's the in the doctor's thing, it's a lot easier, but I'm sure other people can engineer the situations, because in the doctor's situation, we have medical scenarios we go through. We then do Q&A through the polls, so we can see how well they've remembered or how much we need to teach them about a particular subject. And then when we have a case story to discuss, we throw them into breakout rooms. They have a chat for 10, 15 minutes, and then they come back and get educated more. And that has provided the most valuable meeting scenario that we can have. And I think that, as you say, we've got events for the really big events. We've got webinars for the 500 to 1,000. And then we've got the meetings at the 100 to 200 rate. But the biggest challenge is your fundamental point is correct. The biggest challenge of not being deaf by PowerPoint becoming deaf by Zoom is you have to find an applicable way of interaction with the people, bearing in mind that their usual technical knowledge is 0.1%. Thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and I think there's just, I mean, there's so many contributing factors, you know. I mean, you have the mechanics of the platform, and so the platform, let's say, is Zoom. So Zoom gets the Zoom fatigue article, you know, that the world gets to read. It's like, really? Is it the platform, or is it the crap speakers who don't give a crap about looking good and sounding good and preparing well and so forth? Or, you know, I mean, it's, you know, there's training, there's equipment, there's the platform, there's the technical team behind the platform, and then there's the producers who, you know, a lot of what you talked about, John, is the production, the components of when and how and so forth that take those things. I mean, I ran a job for 3M, and it was a large multi-day deal with all their presenters and so forth. But the company from the top forced their presenters to own next to everything. They had to run their own PowerPoints. They had to drive their own PowerPoints. They had to do the Q&A. It's like, why would you do that? I mean, because we were there. We had 2 moderators, professional moderators in each room. It's like, but we had next to nothing to do because they were commanded to, you know, own it themselves. Like, wow, that's just weird. You're already spending the money. But there's such power in offloading, you know, a lot of those responsibilities as well, just simple things, you know. I mean, Ray for ages has managed the waiting room here and booting people out. It doesn't happen all too often, but every once in a while having to, you know, remove somebody from the meeting. David has managed spotlighting for a long time, let alone hosting. You know, I mean, just having, and when we have bigger events with special guests and so forth, I have, you know, more people get involved, especially reading comments and so forth. I know today, Ray, I think, are you the one moving YouTube chat into our meeting chat as well. Appreciate that. Because I'm admittedly, I don't know if I want to say I can't. I guess I can't because I don't read chat while I'm hosting the meeting, and so I'm just not good at that. I don't love I'm not great in the camera, but at the same time, when I move my eyes to a chat window, I consciously, it hits my brain and says I shouldn't be there. I need to be there, but I shouldn't be there, and because I've taken my eyes off the group, and so it having people manage the comments. And David and Ray and others have chimed in the past and said, hey, we've got a comment from, just friendly conversation and interaction that way, and having people just manage some of those tasks and so forth, keeps everybody involved. David Brady.
How's it going? It's
Good.
been a while. I'm sorry. Just wanted to chime in with the little my viewpoint from like enterprise corporate standpoint.
Yeah.
We often defer to using webinar, if only because we want to control the look and the message that goes out. For the most part, those communications are one to many or few to many. And there's, as John said, there's very little back and forth to people from the audience. We'll usually request of audience members, if they want to say something, they can raise their digital hand, and we'll bring them on stage and they'll force their camera and mic open, and it reduces that interaction. We've had times where we've had to turn off chat because of inappropriate things that are being said there, because they think it's a free form kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of different things to consider. The other one I'll throw in there is just the number of the audience and the nature of things. I mean, after 48, 49, whatever the max view you can see in the gallery, it becomes untenable as far as managing all those people. So if it's a meeting, trying to figure out who might be talking or who might have an open mic, if you have pages of people in a particular meeting, would be cumbersome at best. Then the other thing is the meeting versus webinar. A meeting like this where everybody has a voice at the table, it's a smaller kind of group, is there's certain conditions that have to be weighed, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much my thought.
Yeah. Just a side note to one of your comments on multi-page audio management is open mics float up the top. So I never depend on the gallery for an open mic. Is the participants list. If there's an open mic, look at the top, towards the top of your participants, because open mics float up, and not everybody recognizes that, but it's super helpful to know. Cameras don't float, but open mics do. So I mean, for instance, John Drinkwater, you're just below the middle of my participants list. If you'll unmute. Yeah, and you moved up to the top third of my list. You're below all the co-hosts, and you're the next one. So you're the first one under the last co-host. So
a lot of our productions, though, we're doing it natively in Zoom and then forcing that out to a destination, so that controlling the look in a webinar is
controlling the looks. Yeah, I mean, and I'll say that Sam Kakaiko's, follow-up webinar, behind the scenes webinars that they're delivering are really a great example. I mean, a great example of a great looking deliverable, and being fully produced, right? But it's still live. It's not a pre-record. A lot of components involved, but the interactivity does not have. That's one of the big questions. Is the interactivity really truly dependent and adds value to have a audience member's face on the deliverable, right? Is it important to bring them there? Now, there's risk attached. I mean, the answer can easily be yes or no, and both can be right. But the yes, I'll say, inserts risk of quality, right? Because you have no idea necessarily what they're coming at you with as far as type of camera and lighting and dress and the room and all that. So those things, that's just that, there's a risk on the quality. But the others could argue that says, hey, that's part of the natural. Hey, it is where we are these days, right? We've all been forced. We're not forced now, but we've all been forced to be in our homes or offices or bedrooms or apartments, right? And expose that. I mean, gosh, I heard a headline where, the kids, right, having to go to school on Zoom. And one kid, had they issued some discipline because on the back wall behind him was a gun rack with a gun. It's like, what? I mean, it's just insane, but that's where we are. It's just there's that risk. And so it just really depends on the type of message you're trying to get out there and the quality of the message. Quality being, the content of it, the quality of the video, the quality of the audio, and so forth. And so Sam thrives on Q&A. Ray, you're cracking me up. How quick was that? And he's doing a great job in the sense that the production quality is fantastic, and the interaction is fantastic and has no dependency on anybody else coming in via camera, but the interactivity is Q&A, and they can display the questions and comments and so forth. It's a really good example of having that total control, but yet it's live. Everybody knows and feels that it's live, but it's all text based, if you will, as far as the interactivity piece as well. And I think that's where we just continue to go through this maturation stage, defining meeting types, right? What is the meeting type? What is the meeting purpose? And should it really just be a recording that has chapters so people can jump to their points of interest and just put it up on YouTube? Should it be, I've talked about it before, if it's if you're inviting somebody to join a live meeting or live broadcast, you've got to have a reason to really ask them to be there live, because if they can have exactly the same experience on playback, why in the world did you ask for live? I mean, why'd you do it live? You could have done it better with some post-production, probably, right? I mean, almost always, if the playback's the same. So, whether it's events, whether it's Q&A, whether, it's, hey, Ray, our special guest, was there live answering questions. Playback, you're only going to be able to hear what was asked and answered. You're not going to be able to ask your question to Ray because he's now gone, right? I mean, and it could be that or any other event that is only available live and or in person. If you're trying to sell tickets to in person or even sell online tickets, there's got to be a reason. There's just got to be a compelling reason why I should pay for travel and hotel and meals and an admission price to an event in person that I couldn't get by just reviewing things when I have time available for playback. So there's so many things to consider these days, and part of it is the purpose of the deliverable. So anybody else thoughts?
Can I ask, maybe, I don't mean to change the subject, but it's a webinar question that came to me in the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So Okay. An attendee was promoted to a presenter. So I'm asking because I don't really do webinars. An attendee was promoted to presenter. They appeared in the presenter column of participants, but they could not be spotlighted, and they had the word guest next to them. Any thoughts? Because I don't do webinar, but someone asked me.
Get that once more. Could you just
just reread that.
Yeah. Okay. So they're setting up a webinar. They did a test run. An attendee was promoted to the presenter position, and after that happened, they appeared in the presenter column of participants. You know how you have the two different columns, right?
Panelists, yeah.
Right. Sorry, panelists. But they couldn't be spotlit, and they had the word guest next to them. And Tom might want to give us an answer here.
Hey, so I can't speak to why they couldn't be spotlit, but the reason why it says guest is because they're signed in from an account outside of the host's corporate account. So
well, and it's also that's a feature in the portal that can be turned on that says, hey, identify in the participants window guests in my meeting, which are people outside my domain, if you will. And so that I don't think is so much to do with the promotion to being a panelist. It's that somebody turned on that back end feature that says identify guests specifically that are outside my domain. But yeah, same thing, Tom. I don't know why. I mean, if their camera was on and they're a panelist, they certainly should be able to be spotlit.
To the pin thing, it might be if they don't accept the host control feature, whatever it may be called, that might disable the ability to pin them. If you get promoted, I'm pretty sure it prompts you and says, hey, the host will now have the right to turn your video on, off, turn your mic on, off. And if you don't accept that, it'll just keep you in that limbo state.
Yeah. And the only time I mean, the only obvious thing that I know when you can't spotlight somebody is their camera's not on. You know, they've got to have video on, otherwise spotlighting is not even an option at that point. But yeah, we'd have to test that out in a webinar. I don't think that is a natural behavior of a promotion to panelist. But you know, I will say I've never adopted the notion of promoting people to a panelist dynamically in a webinar. I've done it, but only to find out it's much like sending people to a breakout room. It's a bit of a exit and reentry experience. It's not super fast. It's not horrible, but it's not super fast. It's not like unmuting somebody, that's for sure. And but you can unmute somebody in a webinar, and you can unmute an audience member very quickly. But to promote them to a panelist is actually a transition to a rejoining in a different mode.
I think the mechanism in a webinar is not so much unmuting them, but allowing them to speak, and they have to accept that. It's not so much that you can unmute them, but
no, that's a good clarity of terms. That's true. It is. It's giving them the permission to actually unmute. But yeah, so it's one of those things. It's. I'll say I've always felt like it's much harder to create an interactive webinar than it is to get as close to a webinar in a meeting. And so I'd go, you know, meeting to that. So it's you know, I often reference this one. I just did it yesterday. And this author out of the UK who I managed meetings for, you know, yesterday's was a small one, you know, 60, 70 people, but she has this other session that will invite, you know, 800-900 people into a single meeting. And you know, it's it's not terribly difficult in the sense that, mute upon entry and don't allow them to unmute, right? I mean, just that just keeps a quiet meeting, period. And we do breakout rooms, and as long as those settings are still in play when they come back from breakout rooms where they could unmute, they can't, and they come back muted as well. So that all works great, and she does invite them up as guests, ask them raise their digital hand, and we bring them on one at a time. And as long as, me, the host, they're up there on my top left corner, right, with their raised hand, I click, I know they're coming next because I'm making the choice. I click ask to unmute. And while they're responding and accepting that, I'm clicking add spotlight. And by the time I add spotlight, they're usually unmuted and away we go. So the host has the power to override the unmuting or muted mechanisms that keep the room quiet. And then you can still selectively do that. Now, you can't, I've pointed this out in the past, is that same behavior doesn't work with video though. If you say that they can't turn on video, I can't ask you to turn on your video if I don't allow you to, like that same, if it says under security options, allow participants to unmute themselves, and that's unchecked, so they can't unmute themselves, I can still say ask to unmute. But if I have unchecked allow participants to start their video, which means they can't start their video, I can't do the same thing that I can with audio. I can't ask you to turn your video on if I've disabled that feature. I'm like, I wish they'd at least work the same way for a host. That I don't, because the consequence is, in order for me to turn on one person's video selectively, I have to allow everybody in the meeting to turn on their video. I don't have to have them turn it on, but I have to allow them to. I have to enable them to turn on their video so I can ask somebody to turn on one video. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me. I think it's a miss. I don't, I mean, I'm not in all their meetings, right? I'm not in any of their meetings when they're making these decisions, but I think that's a miss. I really do, because it doesn't make sense for me to have to allow everybody to unmute just so I can unmute and bring one person on stage. And I don't have to do that, right? I, as a host, can say, ask to unmute. Nobody else can unmute at the same time, but if you respond yes, you're on. I should be able to do that have that exact same behavior with video, and I can't. So I hope one day that will adjust itself.
Roland has a couple of comments that might help that are here in the chat. Or Roland, turn on your mic and tell us what you were just saying.
So my first question was read the spotlight. Was it being used with Zoom or OSC or the straight Zoom? Was with that problem with the spotlight?
Oh, I'm not sure if we know. Well, it was
because
webinar.
I've seen sometimes where the IDs get confused, especially if you're using like where the IDs in OSC get mixed up and the spotlighting doesn't work, and you have to basically do a clear and refresh and reset, and then it works fine after that. I've seen that.
I just set up a webinar on my other computers while we were discussing that. I set up a webinar. I got an attendee to join. I upgraded that attendee. The attendee could not be spotlighted because there weren't enough people in the room. I added a third person, and I was then able to spotlight that person into the room.
Right, that's what the next thing I was coming to. You need at least 3 persons in the room to do that.
Yeah, so I'm chatting with the person offline, and he was not using Zoom OC. He was using webinars, as we discussed, and he's pretty sure that the camera not being on is the killer. But I think that the camera not being on and not having 3 people in the room was probably it. Yeah,
I know in meeting for sure, because every Friday when I fire this up, I have to have at least 3 before I can spotlight my pre-roll. I thought they changed webinar way back when to two, the requirement of two videos on to then be able to spotlight. But I could be mistaken. It's either two or three. But
Is it two panelists or two participants?
No, panelists. Yeah.
Panelists.
Yeah. I think it's not. I don't even think it's panelists. I think it's video on panelists at that. I think there has to be two videos on to then.
It's three people in the room.
3 persons in the room. Correct.
3 persons in the room, and I've just double checked for you correctly. If the camera is not on, you can't spotlight them.
Right, but when you say in the room, what does in the room mean?
I had one host and 2 attendees, one which I promoted to a panelist.
So
I had
being
3
webinar.
I had 3 Zoom accounts connected to the webinar.
But why would you have to have the attendees video on? You can't even see the attendees video.
No, he said he promoted them.
No, he said there were 3. There's a host and 2 attendees, and he promoted 1. But you're saying you have to have 3 you have to have 3 attendees in the webinar.
You have to have 3 people in the webinar of various levels to be able before you can start spotlighting.
Not with video on necessarily.
Not with video on, but if I turned the video off for the person I wanted to spotlight, the ability to spotlight disappeared.
Yeah. Very good. All the little gotchas, just, be aware. That's the thing.
Yeah, and when I turn his video back on, I can then spotlight him. So you've got to get them to turn the video on first and then spotlight.
So you have a webinar. You're the host. You're going to play a pre-record. How in the world do you spotlight yourself so that's the only thing the audience sees when they show up and everything begins?
Well, if you're in a webinar, then you're the only person on the screen. So you don't have to spotlight yourself because by default, there's no one else there. All the attendees, remember, all the attendees are going to be camera off. So you're the only one they see.
And
that's what you have. That's the thought process you have to change when you're on webinar mode.
And
you've got to think of the panelists. Sorry.
And just following on John, you can set the view that the attendee sees, the speaker mode.
Correct.
So you can add it's a speaker mode, gallery mode, or follow host view. So you force
so
the
you
view
set
that you want.
set the audience view to speaker.
But if you're in a webinar and there's only one panelist,
speaker view, then that like I said, if it's active speaker and I'm the only one, I'm the only host.
Or the last option, Jeff, where it says follow the host view. So whatever the host is viewing, that is what the attendees will see. So that's what you can do.
Yeah. Which here's the thing. You just have to be super familiar with that, right? Like follow the host view is great as long as that's the way my brain's thinking the entire time as the host.
That's correct.
But if I'm getting bored during this, play out and I want to start, trolling around and pinning somebody and so, who is that person or whatever, all of a sudden my interest becomes their broadcasts.
Correct.
And so I've always practiced anyway, set the audience view to.
And if you're local recording, of course, it follows you as well, doesn't it?
Exactly. It does.
Exactly. So you have to know what you're doing there.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're great options, but you just really have to be sensitive to what they are. So, good stuff. And let's see, Roland, you added in your chat or make them a co-host. And true, it'll do it. I won't practice it. That's one of those, it's really in line with why would I have to allow everybody to turn their video on just so I can turn one on? And that is why would I want to give somebody co-host and give them all the tools to the kingdom just so they can, turn on their video or turn on their mic or, things like that, or share their screen and so forth. and it is a practice. We don't use it here all too often, but we do on occasion, is in a meeting is I can give somebody, if Trevor says, hey, I'd like to share something with everybody, I'll make him a co-host. and or I could have gone to the security badge and said, allow participants to share their screen. I don't prefer to use that because now anybody can share their screen, and anybody who if they've been waiting for the moment, I don't have to say, oh, let me give that ability. They can just assume and they can try to beat them, so kind of first come, first serve. Instead, we've decided, and this was after our bad experience of being Zoom bombed in the past, our practice became make them a co-host, let them start their share, immediately remove their co-host, and they can still share. If I did that same thing with the security piece that says enable participants to share, let Trevor share, immediately remove that ability to share, it will kill his share. But if I do that momentary give, then and give and take back, his share starts and it stays, or his share starts and it dies, and if I take back the other way. So that's the one exception I practice anyways. So glad to see that you like that idea. But anyways, it just lots of different ways to go about it. Yeah, David.
Just another follow-up. So regarding screen sharing. So when you in webinar, when you screen share, that's going to become the dominant view.
It does.
Right? Yeah, by default.
Yeah. It becomes the dominant, but there's also an option that you can, part of the audience display choice is side-by-side view. You can actually force that side-by-side view, which then gives it will become dominant, but they have that divider, vertical, that they can resize between spotlighted speaker or speakers and the share. Where side-by-side in a meeting is a user option, right? You have to actually have turned that on at some time to have side-by-side. All right. Any other thoughts, contributions? All right. I think we've done a lot of this. How many of you, let's look real quickly at, let's just quickly go to focus mode. So focus mode has to be enabled on the portal first, and then it'll become available in your meetings. Not quite sure why it's under the More button in the toolbar, but and I believe so. I have Guy Cochran, David Paskin, and Ray Franklin are all co-hosts in this meeting. Can any of you see focus mode, start focus mode under the More button of the toolbar as co-host?
Nope.
Okay. So the only one who can enable focus mode in a meeting is the actual host. I want to make a point of that. So I'm going to start focus mode. It pops up a message on my screen. Let me go to that. See if I can blow this up a little bit. That blew it up all right. That's what popped up. Participants will only be able to see hosts' videos, shared content, and videos of spotlighted participants. Now, it's not perfectly accurate because you can also see yourself. And when they use the word hosts, I believe that is inclusive to hosts and co-hosts. And so when I hit start here, then you
Hi, David.
I'm suspecting you to see yourself, me, and the other co-hosts. Okay, so I think that's what you're going to see. Here we go. Okay, so let's get some reports from the non-co-hosts.
I can see you on both of my screens. I can see a list of people above.
Okay.
And that's in speaker view.
I changed the YouTube stream to gallery view, and so they can see as well.
Yeah.
So gallery view right now is Jeff, Frank, and David as
and my
co-hosts.
personal gallery view with camera on is I'm in there, but everybody else's camera off, camera disabled. And if I go to speaker view and blow it full screen, that film strip across the top that would usually have the tiles of participants pops out into a little side window.
That actually happens even out of
That's
focus
because
mode as long as you're in full screen. Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah, full screen is the pop out. Yeah.
How much? Oh yeah, so it does.
Yeah.
I wish I did that with the control bar.
Amen.
Yeah. So when a quick review on how I stream this meeting. I don't necessarily have to do it this way anymore because it's gotten so much better. But streaming used to be a whole different result, and so forth. But anyways, I have a laptop over here that I do. I fire up Zoom, I join the meeting, and I go full screen on it, right? And that makes, when I click on participants, it's a floater, and it gets drug up to the other screen. And chat floater, drag it up to the other screen. I open the settings window and drag it up to the other screen as well, and then the floating. Usually, there's a floating gallery view, and I pull out. So I pull all those floaters up to the second monitor, so it's just one full screen Zoom client, and then I NDI that over to vMix to stream it.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just found something. So I'm a co-host, not up at the top under view, but down at the bottom on my toolbar under the more, I have a stop focus mode option.
So you can stop it.
So I wonder if maybe I could have started it, but from down there.
You could. Host and co-host can.
So I'm gonna stop it. Yeah, that was kind of my first comment. I don't know if I said it clearly enough, I guess, because I'm kind of like, I don't know why it's under the more button for start focus mode, because I would expect it to be under the view button, but so
I don't have a more button. Oh, wait a second. Yes, I do. Oh yeah, there it is.
So you can, so a co-host can in fact start focus mode. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. That's good. I mean, because, if I'm the host of the meeting and I'm, literally the host and speaking and so forth, then a co-host could make sure that, focus mode is fired up and going, and you're empowered with that feature. Good.
Hey, Jeff. So did you notice anything change just now? Yeah. So
I did that. I clicked on start focus mode.
I did too. And I was wondering if you don't know that we went into I mean, everyone else did because their view changed, but hosts and co-hosts, we don't really know.
No.
Yeah.
No, which is another comment that I would go, that's why I haven't gotten myself into kind of this natural, comfortable working mode in focus mode yet. I think partly is there's no indication that I'm there, and it's really, I think, just a matter of possibly, getting used to, that's what you're running in. So here's the other thought though, is let's say, well, let me, I'm going to add a spotlight. And so Tony is spotlit. Man, your camera's just amazing. Is that the Insta360 link, Tony Mobley? No, is it your phone?
Yeah, he can't. He's muted, but it's his phone.
You're double muted. Sure. You're not Zoom muted.
He's Zoom muted also.
No, he's not Zoom muted on my screen. Anyways, you might even put it in chat if you want. Maybe it's your iPhone, but anyways, it looks fantastic.
It might have been, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the 10S Max using the Shoot app from Michael Forrest.
Okay. Very cool. Good stuff. Yeah, it looks great. So interesting. So I'm going to remove all spotlights, and on my laptop over here, I'm in active speaker view. So it's just me. As a host, my gallery view, I can see everybody. Nothing changes there. As a host, if I go to speaker view, for some reason in speaker view, I see Tony. And probably because I don't have the option checked to show myself as active speaker. I would guess that's probably why that's not changing. If I can remember where that is. Probably not a huge deal.
Up at the top under view.
Oh, it is under view? I thought it was in settings. No.
Yeah, there's a hide self view or show self view.
Yeah, there's a hide self view, but there's also an option in the client settings, I think, that says show me or don't as an active speaker. Hide non-video self view enable. Yeah, see myself as the active speaker while speaking is under the video settings. Okay, so if I turn that back on. All right, now in speaker view, I see myself. Now, point being, we are not in focus mode right now. Okay, so co-host, don't do anything with focus mode. I'm going to start focus mode. And I just want to see, because in speaker view, we still see, and I want to remove spotlight. So there's no spotlights, and we're in focus mode. I see myself as the active speaker. David, go ahead and say something.
David Haskin from sunny Miami, Florida.
Okay, so active speaker became David on my screen and to the audience. And then I'm going to go to gallery view. I can see everybody whose camera's on. I see their names if their cameras are off like normal. Now, you guys see yourself, myself, Ray, and David, right? And then do you see the names of everybody else or not? You see the names. Even if their camera's on, right? So you see, you're not David Brady, but you see David Brady's name, but I see David Brady's video, and Ray and David Paskin see David Brady's video, right?
So here's a question to you, Jeff. In this mode, can you prompt somebody to start video, or can you start their video on,
Well, you can never start somebody's video. You can only request it.
So even in focus mode, this would not mimic the ability of bringing somebody on stage as a panelist.
Well, I can ask. So I don't know if Trevor is listening and able to respond, but I'm going to send a ask to start video to Trevor New. And
hey Jeff.
Yeah, there he is. Yeah,
Jeff, is it normal for me to see myself in the three of you?
Yes, yeah. So everybody will see themselves plus the host and co-hosts.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Now, so I just brought Trevor live, right? Because I sent him please turn your video on request. He responded. Now I can spotlight him for everybody. And now he should be your big screen. Everybody's
and we
big
see him
screen,
across.
Right?
Although in the gallery, we still did not see him. I didn't anyway. Oh, but there he is now. Now that he's spotlit in myself as a focus mode participant, my gallery, Trevor, is illuminated and I can see him. He's got some good bokeh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So so you can see him in the gallery with the little spotlight icon next to his name,
right,
and the green border, right? Because he's the one spotlit.
But if you unspotlight him,
yeah, okay,
he goes away. He's back into name only.
Now he's back
in
to the
gallery.
name only, right? Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's because of focus mode. That's right. So that's a bringing somebody on stage, if you will, and it's very immediate, in the sense as long as they're there. Now, the deal is in certain situations you would want to prepare your audience, who are the speakers. You'd want to prepare your speaking panel to know, hey, please just leave your cameras on. Nobody will see you until I let them see you. That's really important for them to know, so that they, because we as the spotlighters or the show switcher, we don't want to be in the dark. Like if I send that please request to turn your video on, I don't even know if you're there to respond. But what I do know is the run of show has you on in 30 seconds, right? And so I'd rather have you leave your cameras on, but I understand that might make you uncomfortable. But if I let you know that if you'll just leave your cameras on, much like webinar, right? Leave your cameras on as a panelist, but nobody will see you until we actually, spotlight you. Same thing happens in focus mode, is no one will see you until I spotlight you. And
Jeff, if someone's it would be nice, potentially, maybe also dangerous, but it would be nice to be able to, if someone's camera is off, to spotlight them, and then in doing so, it automatically sends the request to turn video on.
Yeah. Other than that, look like, to me, it would look like a faux pas on your broadcast, right? Because what would it do?
Well, Zoom could be smart enough to wait until they actually turn it on to throw them up in the. But if you have a panelist and they're not spotlit, they can still be seen in a webinar.
Only by panelists, not the audience.
So So it's panelists either see active speaker or spotlight. That's it.
Panelists have a gallery.
I'm sorry, the
view.
participants only see active speaker or
spotlight.
There's no gallery view of panelists available in webinar. Is that what you're saying?
No, yes, there is. If you would set the view to gallery and set the gallery view to the attendees.
Yeah, if we set, the point is if we send it to them, yes. But by nature,
no.
We're giving them speaker view or follow host view or
when you say send it to them, what does that mean? How do you send it to them?
As the host who let me say, I'm going to use, I hate it when they do it, but they say host is inclusive of all hosts, co-hosts and co-hosts. Whoever's been designated to switch the show, when you're in webinar, I want to show this. Hang on a second. Give me a second. I think it's super important. When you haven't seen it, it's hard to visualize.
And
Zoom webinar.
Just one comment too, Jeff. On the YouTube stream, you have that that button that says you got to okay it.
Yeah, got it.
I'm just curious if in what sending to the stream, because I'm assuming you're sending active speaker. So if you were to toggle to gallery, would the full gallery go out there?
To the stream, yes. It's the host.
Right.
What the host sees is what the stream sees.
Well, and
so I'm wondering if that's the same thing in webinar, right? If the host changes to gallery view, is that what's pushed out to the webinar?
Yeah, well, because I interjected there and that interrupted, or I was full screen out to the stream, even though in this, we were still in that focus mode, which was kind of.
Actually, I turned it off.
Oh, okay.
David, I'm still running the webinar on my other 3 machines here for you. So I have now got 2 panelists and 1 attendee. Both panelists' cameras are on, and the attendee can see both cameras of the panelists on.
What
if
as,
I then,
as the host of the webinar, what are you seeing? Are you seeing
as the
gallery?
As the host of the webinar, I can switch between, I'm actually in gallery view. I can go to speaker view and I see the main speaker.
So wait, so when you switch, what I'm curious about is what you see as the host, what your participants see, your attendees see?
Yes, the attendee is following the view that I change.
Okay.
Right.
So here I'm going to share.
But you can. There's a little trick with it. At the bottom of that view option, you have to specify what you want. Is it the view, gallery, or host view? Because depending on what you do there, even if you go to gallery view, if you say, for example, at the bottom you have set it for the attendees to see speaker. Even if you go to the gallery, the attendees don't see a gallery; they see speaker. If you set a gallery, even if you go to speaker, the attendees will see the gallery, even if you are the host is in speaker. And then they have the final one is that the attendee sees what the host is seeing.
Yeah, the follow host view has to be enabled in order for you to drive the experience.
Yep.
So yeah, to David's question. So if you imagined this whole section being a pop-up menu of choices, not fully described, but you have a My View section. So when you click on the view button, it says My View and Attendee View. You can set your view to speaker, gallery, or release video order if you have a custom gallery view defined. And then you can also set, which is commonly the case, that you pay attention to the most, is the attendee view. What do you want the attendee view to be? And that's a push. That is, I'm defining what the attendees will see, and that is to follow the host's view. So if you have it on follow the host view, and then you change your view from speaker to gallery, that will change the audience's view from speaker to gallery. If you don't have it on follow host view and you have it on speaker view, and so that's active speaker, that's spotlights and so forth, then you're welcome to move around. Now, I'll say if you're a risk taker, go ahead, but you are welcome to move around and change your screen to gallery or speaker and so forth, because you know that the audience setting is stuck on speaker view and it won't change.
This kind of setting is what I want for streaming out of Zoom. I want to be able to tell Zoom stream out speaker view so that I can be watching as the host gallery view.
Yeah, well, their response might be, that's exactly what all those cloud recording options give you, right? Is it's recording all
streaming,
those
right? But not streaming,
but not necessarily streaming. Correct.
What we'll usually do is bring a second account in, promote it as panelists, and then because panelists within a webinar have the freedom to view whichever view they wish. They can toggle gallery, they can toggle active speaker with no effect on anything, and that addresses the panelists talking into a void, so if they see all the other panelists that might be on deck, at least they have faces to communicate to, etc. Or in our case, with like C-suite executives, we'll usually have an EA in, and just have them there for the coziness of it or what have you.
Yeah. Good stuff. That helped, David?
Yeah, absolutely.
We should. I've often kind of thought about and threatened and never done it. Is hold this. It's kind of weird to imagine, holding this meeting in a webinar, because we but if we did, it would be. it'd be a little bit of work on my part because I'd need to know everybody who wants to attend. I could either have you show up and you show up as an attendee, and I could just promote everybody to panelists so that we can interact. And then we would just, hey, you guys go out and be an attendee, see what this is like, and so forth. And we could share, we not share screen, but, with our virtual cameras and so forth. Even while some of you are out as attendees, we can still share through a virtual camera settings that we're changing while you're seeing, different results and so forth as well. But needless to say, it just never taken on the challenge to try to teach and dig into webinar in a webinar and have it be as interactive and comfortable as the kitchen is in a meeting.
Right. If you want to plan that out, I'd be more than happy to jump in and help out as best I can. Because that's all we've done is webinars.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting with the new Zoom Room update if you brought a Zoom Room into that webinar and then pipe the return signal back into it via NDI.
Well, I mean, think about that if we practiced it well enough, we could have, we could have an audience, we could have panelists, and we could just, simulate a presentation, a small panel, Zoom only, spotlights, right? And a share with spotlights. And then we say, okay, now let's transition to doing this in more of a production workflow and have a Zoom room come in. And basically what's happening there is a Zoom room is joining the meeting or joining the webinar as a panelist, right? And it's plucking, let's say, 3 panelists ISOs out, right? It's plucking them out because now it has visibility to those people. So it's taking those, let's just say those 3 individuals, and now, David, you're going to kick it back to us through, you use an ATEM, right?
ATEM, vMix, doesn't matter. But
ATEM or vMix. And so now I'm going to spotlight David, but he's going to stop returning him, and he's going to start returning his produced feed, which are those 3 people, with a background and lower thirds and so forth, all from the same, meeting. And then maybe I could do the same exact thing. I'm grabbing just my own feed right now, but I've got Zoom ISO up
well, here's another workflow. I don't know if anybody on panel here is using the streaming bridge. We use them at work, and that would be one way to get a sub-produced thing, stream it back to whomever might be hosting it, and they just have it as a bus on their switcher that they can cut into the show,
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah, I mean, the portability of it these days is amazing as well. So, I think we should take the challenge and
I have a Zoom room here on prem that I can always pull into things, and we can mess around.
Great. Yeah, I think I haven't tapped into one. I used to tap into one under Guy's account here just to get the bump, but haven't had to do that in ages, and so haven't. But I'm sure we probably still have access to it, and so one way or the other, let's plan that out. David, let me know what time you want to we'll work out the details and practice it and so forth. We'll have to wait till after.
I was just going to say, next year. Let's do it next year.
Yeah. And that's a quick question as well. I didn't pull up a calendar yet, but the holidays are, what did they fall on? Fridays? Mondays? Not Fridays. Christmas and all.
I think Christmas is on
Sundays.
a Sunday this year.
Yeah, so Sunday and New Year's is on Sunday. So so next week, the 23rd is Friday. which is the night before Christmas Eve. And then the next one is
and it's the 6th night of Hanukkah.
6th night of Hanukkah is the 23rd. How many nights of Hanukkah are there?
734.
Really?
No, there are 8.
It's a lot of candles, man.
Just goes on forever. 8 nights. 8 nights.
All I know is there's a lot of Jewish holidays. Just shop at B&H, and you'll know they are devout to the holidays.
And every Friday night to Saturday they're down
That's
too.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. So, I mean, do you guys have a preference on whether you'd rather just not have to worry about, going to the Zoom test kitchen, or on, not that anybody has to, on the 23rd, and then the following week, which would be the 30th, or would you prefer to?
I would say let's push it out to early January for what we're.
What we're thinking about, absolutely. But I'm just talking about just
general.
having the Zoom test kitchen. I mean, my response to holidays in the past, like Thanksgiving was an example, is, I think people are on holiday, and it's not like on the holiday, it's just super near the holiday, is like, oh man, I'll be off anyways, I'll come. But then others are like, nah, take a break from kind of everything. So
and if they come, they come.
Yeah. I've got kids coming in town from college and all, but I will
give them co-host.
I'll send out invites, and maybe the only thing, if I send out invites and next to nobody shows up, we'll make it a short meeting. But it's always fun just to get together, and so we'll just keep it alive. So, all right, well, very good on that. So yeah, early January, David. Either the 6th or the 13th, first or second meeting in January. We'll make a real focus on webinar, and we'll meet in webinar, and that'll be not forever. I was on a different Zoom meeting ID at the very beginning, but I've been on this Zoom meeting ID.
I can set up a webinar
meeting
for it as well.
Okay.
And I think I have I might have access to a 10,000 seat one if you think we can push the envelope.
Yeah. It's going to be a biggie. But I'll get that from you, and we can host it there. But Guy has me connected to webinar as well. But either way, it may be easier just keep it all there with your Zoom rooms and all that jazz as well. So and then the other thing that I think we want to spend time on come January as well is Zoom chat. The Zoom team, they call it Zoom chat or team chat?
Zoom team chat. And by the way, Tony has his hand up.
Team chat. Yeah, it's in Zoom and it's called team chat. Tony, what you got?
I just wanted to add that with the Zoom update that's coming next week, we might want to have a conversation on next Friday. And also the following week, we might want to have a conversation because some of us, not me, I'm not expecting anything for the holidays, but some of us may get some new toys that they might want to share in Zoom Test Kitchen.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. So last week, David and the crowd went over the release notes for what was the original release date that was listed then, David?
The 12th.
The 12th. And so now it's the 19th, right?
And the web release was it said in the notes that a number of things won't be available to the web release on the 18th. So now they're just
gotcha. Yeah. So there's been a lot of review, and I was fully expecting to be able to sit down until I looked earlier today. It's like, oh, it didn't come out. So I thought we were going to be digging into the actual released features, but we'll definitely hit on that next week and dig into and examine. But I think team chat. I mean, there's a team chat that I think I even saw David. Yeah, David, you're on it. The BFC Zoom OSC ISO integration, feedback that Andy hosts, and it's the team chat's pretty doggone powerful. And it really is, as far as if the team chat is that in the new release notes? Is in meeting chat is getting closer to team chat? Did they announce that? I'm pretty sure, right? Yes, no?
I don't remember.
Maybe
Let me look it
not.
up.
I know I've heard that they're going to, pretty much be the same, which will be great. I did get bewildered earlier. I had my chat open and I'm like, why can't I delete any chat messages? I was just testing it to see, and I can't. And it's like, I didn't disable that, but needless to say. Anyways, the formatting option, the drag and drop of, video clips, audio clips, graphics, things like that. But the continuation of a meeting, that is, if we always had a team chat channel for the Zoom test kitchen and used it in this meeting and next week's meeting and next week's meeting, this chat would have life, like, if never ending, really. And the history would all be there. No matter if you joined late, like if you join late, that's your chat forward. You don't get history. If you come in and you use the team chat for the Zoom Test Kitchen channel, bingo, you've got all the history, you've got last week's. I mean, it's all there, and it's just a continuing thread. So I think there's some real advantage that I haven't taken advantage of yet that I want to.
That isn't in the notes for this coming release, but I mean, there's a lot in the notes for this coming release around team chat, but I believe in an earlier release, they talked about, but I don't quite understand how it works, that meeting chat could be persistent in team chat, but it's not a continuation. It's like a record of the meeting chat would live in team chat. I think that's what it said. And Frank has his hand up.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask a question if anybody knows. I have some real concerns about that, and I'm hoping there's some administrative controls about that. In my organization, quite often we end up in a team meeting, and then everyone will leave except for two people, and they'll have a confidential conversation because they're the last two in the meeting. If they type anything in the chat, is that going to go to the team chat? I don't want that to happen because those could be things that you don't want to share with the team, and I'm wondering how that's all going to work.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there would be the controls to be able to manage and configure to that, right? And or have to train to it,
or host stopping it or something. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. No, perfect. Very good. So webinar and team chat, I think, are going to be some upcoming focus points next week. Presuming, assuming that the release gets released, and we'll dig into those features, and there's quite a few of them, and should have some fun with that. Then we'll keep the invitations open and flowing through the holidays there, since they land on Sundays, with naturally the eve before on Saturdays. We'll see, if people want to take some time and spend it here and dig in. Certainly, I mean, there's never, I never stretch. We often go longer than, kind of the 2 hours that are always blocked, but I never stretch, and I can easily, I mean, I am the webinar that just goes on and on and on. So I know I talk too damn much, but needless to say, I can shorten things. But they don't have to be long meetings. They can be just short hellos and happy holidays and so forth, as far as I'm concerned as well. But needless to say, or if you've got things you want to play with, literally, production tools, some outside tools outside of Zoom that you want to play with or toy with or whatnot. If you want a Zoom ISO, just call it a workshop, and that's just all we do is just sit here and muscle around with Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC and Companion and so forth. Welcome to any ideas like that. Feel free to throw them out there, and we'll dedicate some time to it. So, anyways, always fun to get together. My throat's probably about had it right now, but good to see you guys. What else you got for us, Dave? Do you have any more parades in New York coming?
No. We're in the process of decommissioning
Times Square, right?
Decommissioning space at my current office. So
yeah.
Starts on Monday. I go start tearing apart rooms.
Do you participate in the ball drop?
No.
It's got to be craziness down there.
26 years, I've never been there for that.
Is that right? Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Is there plenty of viewage from your rooftop, I would imagine, of something?
To a degree.
Yeah. Good stuff. Tom, did you saw your hand go up, but I don't know if it went back down or up.
No, sorry. I was just throwing a thumbs up and a clap, and thank you for putting us on as always.
Oh, cool. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us for sure. Tony, what you got?
I don't know how many of you knew that after Zoom Test Kitchen last week, I started playing around with Video Pencil, and I had about 4 or 5 days of trying to figure it out, and apparently I did something wrong with the install, and so there was a lot of trying to figure out to make it work without it working the way it was supposed to. And so there was a lot of time invested in using Zoom and Mimo Live and NDI and a lot of different things. And we got it to work with those different mechanisms. However, it was not working the way it was supposed to. And the main issue that we were having with NDI was that it was an issue of frame rate. And so we got it fixed. Mickey came in. Mickey put me in a couple of rooms, and we were able to actually get into my terminal settings on my Mac, and we were actually able to install it the way it was supposed to be. So it's working properly. And so I know we're about to go, but I just wanted to show you guys how it's working. And I'm so happy with all of the hours that I've invested in getting it to work. So I am using Video Pencil app installed, Video Pencil camera app installed on my Mac Mini. And I am using the Shoot app as my camera, as I've already said. And I have Video Pencil installed on my iPad. And so everything is working. I wish I could show you guys everything in terms of what it looks like to me. I tried to do that in after hours last night. I was unsuccessful, but I'm just going to demo the things that it can do. So I'm using my Apple Pencil. I'm drawing a line. Test Kitchen. So it didn't work. We'll try it again. I'm going to clear. Test Kitchen.
So tell us what
Video
it's supposed
Pencil.
to be doing.
So it's supposed to actually populate the words that I say.
Okay.
Video Pencil.
Oh, it tried.
So let me just do this. All right. So you can see with the pencil, all of the colors shows up, right? so I can circle my head.
How about
That's
if you
one
talk,
feature of it.
can you draw the line while you talk directly into your mic?
Video pencil.
Oh, there you go.
Zoom test kitchen. Zoom test kitchen.
There it is.
So it's showing it, but it's very faint.
Yeah.
It depends. Zoom test. Zoom test. Test. Let's clear. Zoom test kitchen. Zoom test kitchen. So it's so it's
wow.
so it still has some things to work on, but it does work extremely well. You have to understand, for my celebration is that I was using NDI and Mimo Live, and I was playing around with Ecamm, and it was not good. It was not a good experience, but it is much better, much improved. And I'm very happy that I was able to get it to work.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing, for sure. Any of you who are either have it up or you want to click on the oh, it's not streaming from Zoom. So if you go to the Zoom Test Kitchen YouTube channel, there's Robert Sababides provided a lot of chat and feedback and so forth, some good information. Sorry, Robert, for not paying too much attention to it till now. It's like, there's a lot out there. And Ray was moving some of it into our chat earlier as well. But he was, let's see, Mike, Mike added there at the end, says during a Zoom call this week, Blue Melnick mentioned that he was getting notifications on his phone every time someone sent a meeting chat message. The notifications were apparently coming through team chat. So
Tony pinned.
Anyways, it always good information is coming from both. So if you wanted to go take a look at that and kind of take that in too, might be helpful on some of that data. Very good. Yeah. So are you doing video pencil and shoot on phone or iPad, Tony?
So you have to install the virtual video pencil camera on your Mac. And you have to install the video pencil application on your iPad. And once they see each other, then it will work perfectly.
Okay.
And so I'm using high, I think it's called high video. Let me go. I was using low HD. Now I'm using high HD. I was using 720 and now I'm using 1080. So it's pretty good. Because you are seeing me through the XS Max, and that was the issue. So I could open up the Video Pencil app on the iPad by itself, but you would only see the image from the iPad. But you are seeing me actually through the Mac computer, which my camera on the Mac is the XS Max.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Good stuff. Anything else from you guys today? That's all I that's all I've got. Always lots to talk about. We've got, like I said, a lot of release features that we should be able to review next week. And, make sure you spend time with family and friends and get some rest and recoup a bit from whatever keeps you more than busy. Trevor, you mentioned that you might have some things you want to test or share or whatnot. So if you do, certainly let me know and know that I'm not, by the way, ignoring you these last few days. I've been battling the flu, so my quietness has not been personal for sure. But did you get that download, by the way, the Zoom recording?
I did. Yeah, thanks for sending that.
Okay,
I'm
good.
actually dealing with a booster shot too, so it's same
Yeah,
same thing. It's
yeah,
tough stuff.
yeah. They said I had flu A in whatever that means, but Tuesday I wanted to die. It was horrible.
Canadian flu. Flu, eh?
Yeah, flu A. Flu A. That's good. Anyways, yeah, not fun, but feeling better, so that's good. Anyways, good gathering together. And, if you haven't, on the invitation email, if you haven't joined the Discord, click on that, join the Discord channel. We're trying to, get more activity there and need to get, definitely get some more, have it become, kind of the place to go for the deep questions and helps and so forth. Community.zoom.us is a great place. It's not perfect in the sense that there's some gibberish questions or posts that just shouldn't be there, and then there's those that you're going, okay, don't know what the heck that means, and then there's some real questions that are kind of fun to answer and just test your knowledge a little bit or gives you a confidence boost, and it helps the community throughout the world and in the Zoom space. And other than that, keep doing what you're doing. So always good to see everybody and spend some time and learn more as we do this thing called Zoom. But till next week, I will wish you farewell and good night and have a great weekend.